You are the pickle lady. This blows me away. How brilliantly.
She's the real deal.
Oh, he did it. He did it.
I was waiting.
Welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, an entertaining chat show hosted by best-selling mystery and thriller authors Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey, in lively, humorous and informative conversation with distinguished guests who share their thoughts and experience about forging a successful author career.
Welcome to our show. Glad to have everybody with us. This week we have a great episode with Deanna Roy, who also writes under the pen name of JJ Knight. We're going to chat with her shortly, but before we get started, Nick, do we have a listener question?
We do have. It's so funny. We do.
We do.
It's almost like we planned it. Okay, Stuart from the UK, all the way across the pond, sent in a question. Have you ever experienced writer's block, and how do you move beyond it?
No.
And that's why you're the best color guy in baseball.
I will say, like, writer's block is one of those things that yes, I think there's points where I struggle with a story. I don't think it's necessarily writer's block. I've never frozen. I do know people who have anxiety that around writing. A really good friend of mine, she can sometimes get panicky about it. Best advice I ever heard, and if I have trouble, sometimes I do this, is simply write the next word. Like if you're stuck on what to write next, just get a line out, because once you get one line, then you try to get the next line, and eventually your brain starts going, oh, it's supposed to be working, and it starts flowing the way it's supposed to. Now, I do sometimes have plot points and story ideas that get me stuck, because when you're trying to, string out a story and a narrative and follow all the right rules and make sure that, I've included all of Chekhov's arsenal, the guns that I introduced before, I got to make sure I put them back in. Then I have to kind of think about the logic and the concepts of the story. And that might just take me taking a walk or taking a drive to kind of let my mind clear of everything else and just focus on that story for a minute. How about you, sir? Do you have writer's block?
Very similar, actually. I get stuck within parts where, shoot, what am I doing now? Where's it going to go now? And I think we both ended up in a similar place where we're plantsers or whatever. We're half plotting, half pantsing. And so, what I'm working on now as we record it, I've written through one timeline, because I do a lot of dual timelines at my AJ Bailey stuff. So I've written through one timeline, and I've just got the last chapter, probably maybe two in that to write. And then I started in the older timeline, which is set in 1944. And I don't have that completely plotted out. I actually have the end and the beginning, but I have a bunch in the middle, which is, it sounds terrible if I say filler story, because it's not filler story. It's building the story, but it's a lot of scenes that there's a lot of options of what can happen in those scenes as in the background some storyline is building. And so I have sat down and looked at it and gone, what am I doing here? What's she going to be up to here? What's going to be this bit? And that happens a lot when I'm writing. And another, what you were saying is great. Just get something down, right? Just write something, just move along, have a spaceship fly out of the sky and land on the ground and make yourself laugh. And then you'll be surprised what'll come. Also, stepping away from it, like you said, I always find going and doing some form of exercise normally jars something loose in my skull. And the other thing is write another scene, write something else. If you're stuck on what to do with here, write something else.
Somebody at the Inkers Con I just got back from made the comment that if you're stuck, you should either kill somebody or have them have sex. Either way, it's going to move your story along. So.
Of course, if you're writing clean romance, this might not work for you.
It might not, no. But, it's going to be completely kill anybody in the clean romance or kids' books. That's pretty bad, too, but still.
Or sex. Cool. So let's move on to our chat with multiple USA Today best-selling author of new adult romance, women's fiction, romantic comedies, sports romance, non-fiction. I don't know what she doesn't write, actually.
I was getting ready to say, dang.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't see thriller in there.
I was going to say, I feel like you're rattling off shrimp, like Bubbly Gump did, like
fried shrimp, boiled shrimp. Anyway, let's meet Deanna Roy.
Welcome to the show, Deanna. We're so excited to have you here. How are you today?
I am so great. Thank you guys for having me.
let's get a little bit of a background. How did you get started in writing, and when did you first get published?
I am one of those cliche writers who, as soon as I could write words, was writing. I wrote my first children's book when I was 6, and I wrote my first novel when I was 16. So I always wanted to do, so the question always is at that point, and you get to college and you go, oh, wait a minute. There's that amazing cartoon that says, what's the difference between a writer and a park bench? A park bench can support a family. So I knew going into it that it was a New Yorker cartoon way back in the day. And I just knew even at 18, going into college, like I need to figure out a vocation around writing. I'm not going to be able to just sit around and write books. I had that understanding even, in the late 80s. So I went into journalism.
Oh, so did I.
Went into newspaper journalism. Yeah, it was a great way to start because the best thing I learned from the journalism part of my career was how to meet a deadline. And even now, 35 years later, I just hired a new editor for my indie work. And she's like, well, how good are you about, when I schedule you in? And I said, oh, no. Like, I have a background in newspaper. She goes, oh, say no more. You're going to make your deadline. And I said, exactly. I will do whatever it takes when it gets to the crunch time to make sure the book is done and hand it off to you. And of course, now I have a traditional publisher as well as my indie stuff. And it becomes even more critical because sometimes they give me things pretty quickly, like turnaround, like in 7 days, we need you to rewrite half the book. That hasn't happened to me, but it has happened to friends of mine where they get major, expectations when they don't have the time to do it around a full-time job and things. But I do make my deadlines, and that comes from that history. But as far as writing, I started really thinking about writing novels again somewhere in the very late 90s. And I wrote a memoir about my first year teaching. My career meandered all over the place. But that was when I had subject matter in my life that I felt this should be a book. So my first year teaching in inner city Houston, I did write a memoir about that year. The national incidents that happen in schools now are much bigger, but at the time we had an incident that got national news attention, and I was a first year teacher and the child was arrested out of my classroom. So I knew I had a hook that could get publicity because I came from the newspaper background. I knew I had all the things in place to write a memoir that potentially could be published. I went to an agent conference. I did get an agent in 99 for that memoir, but we never sold it. And then I went on about the business of, having a family and things. And I didn't write again for a number of years, and that agent retired. So when it came back around to where my kids were a little bit older and I could think, oh, it's time to write a book again, I had to start the agent search all over again. I spent a good decade on that, trying to get an agent. I wrote 6 books all over the map, from middle grade to domestic thriller, trying to find the right project that would get me an agent and get me launched. And then, of course, in 2011, we started hearing about the Kindle and about self-publishing. And by then I had some well-vetted books that I could potentially indie published. So in 2011, I decided to go ahead and take one of my books that I knew I had an audience for that I could sell to, and I self-published it. It took 13 books of self-publishing to have a hit book. Once I got the bug of writing indie books and publishing them, I loved it, and I wanted this to be my full-time job. At that point in my life, I was a photographer full time. And I love being a photographer because it gave me access to people, and it didn't take my words away. When I was working in editing jobs and even teaching to a certain extent, I didn't have enough energy at the end of the day. But photography was a perfect pairing because I'd have this image and I had this family that I had met, and I could just spin these ideas about who they were. So I had a lot of material that I could use in my writing. And that was the moment where I said, I can really do this. So I got together with other indies who were doing well. I determined romance would be the place that I could break out from writing more literary stuff that I was doing. And I learned how to write a romance novel. I loved romance. I had been reviewing romances since I was 15. I had like 500 or 600 reviews on Amazon at the time when I started writing romance, and they took them all away eventually. At one point, they decided I could no longer write reviews of romances, and they deleted my entire romance review history, which was pretty devastating. But I understood, and they don't want us. At the time, I think they were combating the problem of people writing bad reviews on other authors' books. So I understood why they did it, but it was so devastating to lose my entire history of romance reading. But it was a natural fit for me. My first romance was awful. It was just awful. It completely flopped. It's still out there, and I still have it published because I still like the book. It's just not really a romance. I think I say this is an untraditional romance. If you look at the summary for it, that one is Stella and Dane. But the next one, I really had the bug. People were hitting it big at that point. It was early 2013, and I was ready. I was ready to drop being a photographer and being a full-time writer. I wanted it more than anything, and I felt like I had the chops for it. I felt like I could do it. So I got with some other romance writers and said, please help me, tell me what I'm doing wrong. And they said, first of all, your sentences are too long. And I learned about things like the beats, the tropes of romance, even though they say you'll internalize it. I had never really internalized romance beats and how the flow of a romance should go. I had really internalized literature beats and the pace of a literature novel. So I had to relearn that. I had to relearn sentence structure. I had to really be intentional. And I think sometimes when I talk to people about how intentional I am about my marketing, about what I put in my books, it comes from that because I had to relearn it. It did not come naturally for me to write a marketable book. Writing a book was natural, but not a marketable book. So then I wrote Forever Innocent. I took all the things that I was putting in my literary books and I gave it to a new adult romance, which was the hottest commodity of all time in 2013. We were coming off of some really big, Colleen Hoover was definitely in there. H.M. Ward was in there, Abby Glines. A lot of them were just really hitting it with this age range of, 19 to 23. So I nailed that perfectly, got help with the tropes, and I had my first really big hit USA Today bestselling book. And then I wrote the sequel as fast as I could. And then I wrote 4 more. And by the time I had 6 books in that series, I could quit photography. I was rolling. I had a career, and that was really a beautiful time in indie publishing and being a writer. I still love what I do. I have to work harder at it, but I think of those years of how much easier it was to market and have a successful book. And I'm so glad I got to be a part of it.
That's very cool. It's great to hear you say that too, because when we talk to various authors, it's, when did you get started? When anyone says like 2011 to 2014, that period of time, they all have a glint in their eye about it. And it's, I think, helpful for listeners and budding authors to hear how it really has changed and how much more difficult it is to get rolling now. It's not impossible. It's just harder. And your comment about being deliberate is really well taken.
Well, I was in the gold rush and failing too. I put out 12 books during the gold rush that all failed. They did not even earn out the amount that I put into the editing and the cover design. And of course, we were having the interiors formatted then too, because we didn't have the tools we have now. It was hard to put books out then. There was just the infrastructure wasn't there. Finding editors was different. They were way more expensive then. I spent 4 times on editing then than I do now.
And covers were insane. Yeah.
Oh yeah. My first cover was, the only time I spend that much on a cover now is if I go ahead and buy an image from a photographer that's exclusive. Then I will spend that much on a cover. But just for the design of it, I'm spending about 25% of what I did in 2012 to do a cover.
Now, how many pen names do you have?
4.
How on earth do you keep track?
Well, okay, so that was a very deliberate choice, and it has to do with Amazon's algorithm. I learned about Amazon's algorithm very early and very intensely because of my mom. My mom is one of these pure Christian ladies who, when she discovered the Kindle, went and downloaded every single version of the Bible, every Bible study, every women's study. And so her entire Kindle backlist was filled with wonderful Christian things for her. And then she wanted to support her sweet daughter. So she went and bought my first big hit book, Forever Innocent, which is a steamy new adult romance. And this was very early in the career of that book. And I was sitting beside her, showing her how to buy the book and put it on there. And all of a sudden, I saw my also boughts switch because it was very early in that book's life. It didn't have a big sales history. It was like literally, and it all became Bibles. And I went, this can't be good. This can't be good. And that was my very early introduction to who you sell your book to in the first few days of its life or in pre-order is critical to how it's going to do. It took me probably a week, and this is back in 2013, to fix that algorithm and get it into other new adult books. So I learned that with my newsletter now, I'm very intentional about who buys my book first. I have subgroups in romantic comedy. So as going back to the pen names, I wanted to make sure that my pen name would be the readers who would be buying that book and set it up for success. Because the last thing I wanted to do when I moved from emotional romance to romantic comedy was to get an algorithm thinking that this is going to be an emotional book and not a comedy, and then be disappointed, them not finish the book. And Amazon knows all that. They can see the people not finishing the book or going to the page and not buying, and your conversion going down because they see it's not the same thing. So I circumvented that from day one using pen names. I knew as far as my writing style, I needed some diversity in what I wrote. So I did it via pen names, even though they're all romance pen names, but they're different derivatives of the pen names.
Did you struggle you have one that's successful, but I want to write a different genre, to pivot that and actually build another pen name? It's almost like starting over from scratch.
I did not have as much trouble with the first three because Deanna was super successful. My second pen name was a secret. So nobody knew who I was. When I started JJ Knight, nobody knew. All the messaging was turned off. I had a team by then. I had an editor. I had a full-time assistant. I had all those things in place. So we branded that one. It was as a sports, actually, romance author. It was a secret. All messaging was turned off. You could not email JJ. You could not talk to her. But we did it using the advertising strategies that had been successful for Deanna just to start it from day one. So JJ Knight was a hit from the very first book because I took everything that I learned as Deanna and put it into JJ. Now, what happened next was I wanted to write with my husband. And we were going to write romantic suspense. And he wrote the car chases and the blow up things. And I wrote the love scenes. We realized that I really wanted to get away from the JJ brand. So we started that pen name. It was not as successful as the other two, but we realized that also romantic suspense was just kind of a different beast as far as I didn't really know how to market it as well. But my fourth pen name, which I wrote sort of as a balm for my soul, which was a sweet romance pen name, completely flopped. I used every strategy that I had used for the other three pen names, but it was 2019 by then. And starting a pen name in 2019, that was still not super secret, but it was super divided because I couldn't let the steamy readers that I already had be the people who started in on my sweet pen name or they would wreck the algorithm. And I found it was very hard to start. And that's when I started really looking at, okay, I shouldn't be giving advice to people who are starting out unless I can figure out what to do myself, because it's way harder now than it was even a few years ago to start a new pen name.
So how do you keep up the balance between like 4 channels and newsletters, social media?
We were just talking about this a little bit earlier about trying to keep up with all the social media and the posts, and you're forever feeling overwhelmed with one name.
Right. Well, it definitely got harder when I didn't have a full-time assistant anymore. And currently I don't have an assistant. I'm pretty much doing it all. I do put off pieces of what I do and hire people, but I don't have anyone who just works for me and does, what I ask. I guess what I really had to do was figure out what was that 20% that did most of the work. And for me, it was going into the Meta Suite. It was scheduling out very quickly and very easily graphics, posts, links, things for Instagram and Facebook and my Facebook group simultaneously. So every Monday, I spend about 30 minutes on that. And I can do all 4 pen names for the week on my primary channels in about half an hour. It's just a matter of being organized. I could easily hand that off to an assistant, but right now I don't, because I do like to be a little nimble. If I see something happening with a book or I get this crazy idea, I can just work on it very quickly and change the things. I also am really bad about changing covers. I've gotten to the point now where I only put title treatments on my graphics because I change my covers so frequently that my graphics just become old very fast.
Does that help in your genre, like the changing covers? Is that?
Absolutely. Romance is suffering right now from kind of this weird space where we have illustrated covers, we have just guys on the cover, we have couples on the covers, we have flowers all over the covers. And I feel like if a book starts to stall out, it's very easy for me to recover it in a different style and pick up a different type of reader. So I do that pretty often. I also have a direct store now, and in order to have special editions or unique editions, I'm doing more than one type of cover. So the title treatment is the only thing that stays the same throughout all the book's life.
So let's expand a little bit more on branding, because you are the pickle lady. This blows me away how brilliantly.
She's the real deal.
Oh, he did it. He did it.
I was waiting.
We knew it was coming. We knew it.
Holiday and Tuesday night.
These jokes do not sour, I promise you. It's all right.
Somebody, I'm going to unplug him in a minute.
I know.
Okay, so let's talk about this brilliant branding you have with your pickle verse. How did that start?
It actually came about as necessity. We've already talked about how, in 2013, what I really, really wanted was to be a full-time author. And in 2019, I had just started That Pen Name That Completely Failed. And I was looking at the end of my reign as being a full-time author because everything had collapsed around me. And now I was looking at, this is a way different world to market in. I just spent a whole year rapid releasing a pen name that failed. And I needed to decide, where am I going to start again? How do I make it happen in this current world when all of my pen names have really gotten to a level where I cannot maintain a full-time career? So we were actually doing NaNoWriMo in 2019. And we had a brilliant book by Kara Bristol called Naughty Words for Nice Writers. And we were going through and looking up euphemisms for male anatomy. And we were all laughing about the different words. And then one of them was pickle. And it got the biggest laugh of the whole thing. And I remember sitting there, I was writing some random book. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this got the biggest laugh. I wrote one romantic comedy in 2017, which had been sort of a better seller than most anything else, but I didn't think I was funny. I was known for my tearjerker novels. This weird romantic comedy that came out of me was just random. I thought, well, if I did it once, maybe I can do it again. And that was how it was born. I knew I wanted to title the book Big Pickle. I already in my head had the argument with Amazon when they tried to say it was too whatever, for a title that no, this is about a group of delicatessen owners. And so I created the entire pickle family. They own a delicatessen chain. They have, bread called Dill Go. All of it just came to me in this rush. So I sat down with the internet, with all the jokes. I culled the jokes, the things like the big deal. And they get in a real pickle sometimes and when they get in trouble. So all of those things, it was like all the books just came to me so quickly. All the tropes that I could use. Secret Baby is what I'm doing next. That's Big Pickle, that he's in. And it was amazing. I couldn't even stop writing down the ideas. I still go back to that original 2019 doc of ideas that I had, even though I'm working on my 12th Pickleverse book. And everyone who hears it instantly knows it's a steamy book. They instantly know it's a comedy. I don't even have to brand it that hard anymore because they know what it is the minute they see Big Pickle, and whether it's the guy on the cover without a shirt or whether it's the illustrated girl holding a pickle with her heart glasses on, they know what it is. And that branding it saved me. The pandemic came in 2020. I was releasing the first Pickleverse on April 1st, 2020. And as we approached the shutdowns in March, everybody was like, don't release a book right now. And I was like, I have to. I'm trying to save my career here. And now I can't even get another job. So I had to go for broke. I went to my husband and said, I know how to market this book. I don't know if it's going to take off, but I'm going to just take several grand from our joint account and I'm going to throw everything I have at this because it's literally my last shot. And it's a necessary shot because I had kids who are homeschooling now because of the pandemic. And he said, do it. Just do it. I believe in you. I know this is going to work. And I said, I just remembered that laughter from that very first time. And I said, please, universe, if I was ever going to make a comeback, let it be here. And it worked. It completely worked. We hit the top 100 very quickly. I wrote another sequel. It hit the top 100 very quickly. So then I was like, I have something here. And so I just went full tilt. I got the shoe. I have custom shoes. I have a custom dress. I have a custom background for when I do signings. My background, if you could see it here, is all pickle merch. I have so much pickle merch. And when I started my direct store, I have these bottles that say, I read pickle smut. And these are the favorite things of people. I have stickers. I have buttons that say, I read pickle smut.
What you're saying, though, is just so I can clarify, is that the Pickleverse has become your bread and butter.
Oh, no, he didn't. But yes.
Okay.
Cool. Yes, it is.
Oh my God. So I'm looking at the cover of Big Pickle. And so everyone knows you should go Google this and look it up. So it's a picture of a guy that looks remarkably like Doug with no shirt on. And the word big is right over the crotch of the guy. And it says pickle underneath. There is no subtlety involved in this cover.
That was absolutely intentional. I actually did that cover myself. That is actually the second cover. It's slightly different. So when I first released the book, Amazon was totally cool with my advertising it. I was spending quite a bit of money. I was doing some Facebook ads, but mostly Amazon ads. And then one day, like 3 weeks in, when I was flying high, they just cut them off. And they said, this is inappropriate. And I was like, whoa, wait, what? And it turned out it was really the combination. Actually, back then you could talk to someone. Now it's pretty much all bots. But they said it was the combination of the title, even though I explained the delicatessen part, and the fact that he was shirtless on a bed. So I changed him. If you look at it, he is no longer on a bed. He's on a sofa. And that allowed me to start my ads back up. So one thing I gleaned from that is that it's not always one thing that gets your ads cut off. It's sometimes a confluence of problems that do that. Now, at this point, they will not allow me to do Big Pickle, even with that cover, as an advertisement. It's evolved since 2020 and they're way more strict. But I put illustrated covers on the paperbacks for a reason. And that is so that I could always advertise the paperbacks on Amazon, because it really doesn't matter. Once people see the ad and they click on it, they're going to move to the Kindle side if their own account is about.
Do you use Facebook ads then too?
Absolutely. And now it's pretty much swapped. At this point, I used to use 70% Amazon and 30% Facebook, and it's flipped. But I'm about 70% Facebook and 30% Amazon when I launch a book.
Interesting. Now, you're on TikTok too, right? You're producing TikTok videos. How does that work for you? It's a mixed bag out there for a lot of authors.
If you took a big deep dive in JJ Knight's history on TikTok, you'll see that I'm what Becca Syme calls a drafter. And a drafter is not about drafting a book. It's about getting in the wind behind the cyclist who's in the lead and using that wind to make yourself go faster. I am that kind of author. Absolutely. So you'll see it with my books to a certain extent, but you'll definitely see it in my marketing. And so when I saw TikTok was taking off, I drafted behind everyone who was successful. If it was candles flickering in the background with text over it, I did that. But when I did go viral on TikTok, I think that was 2022. That was when I was doing tropes over, I think, book flips. We were flipping the pages of our books. So I did go viral in there because I have built in the tropes of the Pickleverse pretty intensely to where those inciting incidents are funny. They have to be just so funny and so out there. That's been my success on TikTok, is just pulling from those tropes, to the point now that when I think about what my next book will be, I think about what am I going to put in those TikToks? And if I can't think of anything, then I need to go back and reconsider the book I'm writing, because maybe I'm not being edgy enough. I'm not pushing the envelope enough on the comedy.
And with the branding again, so you've got the TikTok going on, you're running the ads to get the book sales, and then a newsletter's a big deal. How often are you sending out newsletters?
I send out a newsletter every Friday. And after the failure of my sweet pen name in 2019, I unified I decided, let's just put it all in one newsletter. So I did an introductory newsletter where I said, hey, you might know me as Abby. You might know me. And I said, we were all going to be together now. And I did see a little bit of fall off from some of the Abby Sweet fans especially if I put in a spicy excerpt in. But I went ahead and let that happen because I knew Abby was going to be a pen name that I didn't write very often. So I was okay with a little bit of fall off there. Besides, they probably follow me on BookBub or, Amazon, where they'll still know if I release a book under those pen names. And I do occasionally do that. But it's a unified newsletter every Friday. You might get a JJ book, you might get a Deanna book, but it's a unified.
So I know you're using Patreon. Kind of like that's something I think a lot of authors are interested in, and how to kind of get into that. And could you kind of tell us a bit of like how that's working for you and what kind of content you're providing? And are they pickle recipes?
I do have a few pickle recipes. We did invent a drink called the Pickleverse. My husband and I spent a lot of research and time sampling, coming up with what that drink would be like, because we knew it could be like, standard. But honestly, the Patreon came about when I went traditional, because they were going to release 2 books back to back that were rom-coms, but not Pickleverse rom-coms. And I sat there going, I can't let this die. I can't let the Pickleverse go fallow while I release these other rom-coms. So I came up with the Patreon as a way to create new material, and I could keep the diehard fans involved. And it's my favorite thing. My Patreon is absolutely my favorite part of my author life now. So what I do there is, at the base level, you get to read a chapter every Friday of what I'm writing. Sometimes I'm a few chapters ahead. Sometimes I'm literally skidding in at 8:50, uploading something at 9:00 on Friday morning. But that way they get to get the new stuff before it goes into Kindle Unlimited, because I have this window before it goes into KU where they can read it. They also get the full final book 2 weeks before it goes into KU. And now that I have a direct store, I also sell the full final book so they can actually see what they're getting for their money. They don't have to pay for that, right? Even if they're in KU, they get to own the book and without paying for it because they're part of the Patreon. Where it's really, really taken off, though, are with the picklograms. I started the Patreon with the picklograms because at the time I was still heavily writing the books for trad, and I wasn't writing a pickle book yet. And I felt overwhelmed by the process of being a trad author. It was different. It was so different, going through multiple revisions, multiple copy edits, and I didn't write for a little while. But I did send out monthly envelopes with pickle swag. So all these wonderful things, Doug, that you're saying about being salty or sweet, those were the things that were going on stickers, that were going on little sticky notes, that were going on cards. So basically the Patreon was to keep my branding up, but it became a thing of itself. I learned that my super fans really wanted more from me than I was giving them. So they had the opportunity 2 or 3 times a year to buy an ebook and maybe a paperback, but that's all they could do. But once I opened the Patreon and they go, ooh, I can do a $25 a month tier and I can get other little things, they really went into that. So then I started the direct store where I bundled with bigger swag, more expensive swag. And there seems to be no upper limit to what the super fans will buy because they love it. Their buy-in to the Pickleverse, it feels like it's a community, it's a place. And to be honest, I don't have to keep my group going anymore myself. They provide the pickle content. They see pickle. Recently, Pepperidge Farm released a limited edition pickle flavored goldfish. They were on it. And so I immediately bought packages. And so we have Zoom calls where I'm going to try the food first, and then somebody gets to win another package of it. I have pickle flavored jelly beans. Disgusting. Don't eat those. And so usually they get to vote on a pickle flavored food for me to eat in every Zoom call. The patrons get to vote. So I've had pickle fudge, pickle soda. I had this pickle sour ball that I had to spit out and my whole mouth was green. It actually stained parts of my face for a couple of days. And they still talk about that. Remember when Deanna stained her face with the pickle balls? And that becomes a shared experience. And so now It's just, we're going to have a pickle pajama party soon. And I have pickle pajamas in my direct store. They can buy them if they want to and wear them.
Nick, we need pickle pajamas for Nink. We could go down to the beach.
They will be repping the thriller world pretty good, wearing pickle pajamas at the beach. Deanna, there's a question we ask all our guests that come on, and that is, what do you feel is your author's superpower?
I love this question. I listened to several people's answers to this question, and I was thinking about it.
You've listened to the show?
Yes, I listened to the show.
You're the other one.
I know that the wheel
lovely.
is coming, right?
No, we cancelled it. No, we should have told her no, it's cancelled.
The wheel, yes.
Right. So my superpower, I always knew that I had the ability to rally people and make them want it. So when I did Becca Syme's Clifton Strengths, I was coached by her. I learned that I had 2 things that she said, boy, these 2 things together mean you can do anything. And I finally put a name to what I knew I could do. And one was woo, winning others over. It's in my top 5. And the other is activator. It's number 2 for me. So my ability to rally people around me and to activate them to do something is my superpower. I use it with my fans, with the Pickleverse. If they, want to do something, we do it. We buy our pickle pajamas and we get together and we eat crazy pickle food, or with other authors. If I want to instigate a group promotion or marketing, I have that superpower where I can convince them that this is what we're going to do and we're going to get out there and we're going to rock it and we're going to do it. So that is.
You have that truth. That is a truth, because your enthusiasm is absolutely contagious. I mean, if you said we're getting on a bus and going to a Pickleverse event, I'd be on board.
Look, I want some pickle pajamas. I am going to be on your website going, let's see.
All right, Doug, spin the wheel.
All right, spinning the wheel. You can hear it. Let's see. Okay.
Perfect timing.
Oh, well, hey, this is coming out in July, right? So this is a good Christmas in July kind of a question. So what would you like for Christmas, Deanna?
Oh, wow. This is not a question I anticipated. Okay, for Christmas, I got it. I want a swimming pool. I don't have a swimming pool. In Texas, we're at limestone right below. So a swimming pool is a bigger investment here than in other places. So yeah, somebody bring a jackhammer, actually get rid of that limestone and give me a swimming pool for Christmas. And then we'll have a pickle pool party. Listen to that alliteration. It writes itself.
Oh, it must be a completely phallic shaped pool.
Pickle-shaped pool.
And you don't dive in one and you dive out one. No, okay, let's stop there. All right, Deanna, thank you so much for coming on and tolerating Doug's jokes on our show.
Thank you so much.
That was a lot of fun. She's lovely.
My stomach hurts. I was laughing so hard. That was great. So,
well, what brilliant stuff too. She's been around since the gold rush, and she's really got her eye on the ball when it comes to the business side of things. The deliberate branding and her Pickleverse thing is. She's
that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
and hitting it from all the different angles. It is a universe. Really doing a great job with it. So, what's exciting in your world at the moment?
Just we've rolling off of 2 releases. We had Missing in Zanzibar last month, which is doing really well. It was very nice. Got Midnight Dance, which is my Corsair series, came out earlier this month.
I love that series. I love the Chase books, but I really like that new series.
Yeah, I really like the Corsair series, and I think it's still slow compared to the Chase series, and I think that's something you can hear her saying the same thing. She talked about some series it took her 6 books to get going, and I think that's something that a lot of authors need to understand is you start a new series, unless you're blowing it with a huge name, it's going to take a little time to build that series up, because your fans are sometimes fans of specific series, and you got to get them to follow over. And you've seen that with Nora and AJ. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I know you've seen it with yours. Our friend Don Rich has seen it starting a new series that he's got going on at the moment, that you don't automatically take everybody over. And a big part of that is communicating with them. You've got your newsletter list, but your newsletter list isn't even, it's a small percentage of the people that actually read your books. So, you've got to communicate that new series. I'm always amazed that people find out, oh, you have another series, this Nora Summer series, or the other way around. Oh, you have this AJ Bailey series. It's boy, they seem really interconnected in my world and in my life, on my website, on my Amazon page. If you click on my author name, it'll show both. And yet they don't automatically cross over at the end user level sometimes.
Even my first year, my Max Sawyer series, which I don't even write anymore, and I still get people. I had a recent email from somebody asking me if I was going to write any more of those, and they come across them kind of randomly, but they're not the same readers generally that I have for the Chase series. So, I pick a few people up who have read Chase and go back to it, but for the most part, unless you're marketing that series specifically a certain way, it doesn't market the same way.
Interesting, but it seems to be that about the 3 book mark. When you've got 3 out in the new series, with Nora, 3 got them pretty much on the map and almost as good as AJ. And by 5, it was actually taking over. And now with 6 books out there, my Nora series has taken over the AJ series with 16 books in it now. Spitfire Storm just came out, which I'm really happy with. Fun story. So
I gotta say, I like the idea of the pajamas, and I'm thinking we should come up with some 2-author pajamas.
2-author pajamas.
I will wear those to Neek.
I know you will.
Come up,
yes, you would. All right. Look for episodes every 2 weeks. Until next time, be cool to each other.
And fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the 2 Authors podcast with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt. Subscribe on your favourite platform for alerts on new shows coming every 2 weeks.